What's up, guys? This is your host, Danny Baylor, Danny Cakes, and you are listening to the Immeasurably More podcast. All right, you guys, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. My name is Danny, and I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. And so just kind of want to give a quick reminder about what this podcast is about, what really drew me to start sharing my heart and opening up with you guys. Maybe you're new here, maybe you're a consistent listener, but I just want to remind you, so much of what I share actually led from a really unhealthy relationship. And so it really just gave me just so much perspective on how important it was to be aware of my thoughts and what I really wanted for myself. And you guys, what I wanted for myself really drew from that, my inner spirit, and that being the Holy Spirit, being God, just leading me to really where he called me in my life and why I felt so uncomfortable and why things just didn't quite feel right. I didn't always have peace. I was going back and forth and all these things. And so because of that unhealthy relationship, I'm so grateful for it. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done, walking away from it. But it led me to who I am today, and to be able to just enlighten you guys on maybe what you're feeling isn't just you, and how to justify those feelings. And so this podcast has totally evolved to just really focusing on relationships and dating, what I feel like God's called us to. And it's ultimately his desire for us with dating and sex and love and all the relationships and all those things. And so I just love to preach about how, you guys, that God can do really immeasurably more through us. And when I'm saying that, he is at work within us, in our hearts and our mindsets and our actions. I've faced a lot of different circumstances through that process where I was like, wow, that I never thought that I could do this. I never thought that I would have the courage. I never thought that I would be able to have this conversation with somebody. And I know it was just making those steps and being obedient and really just, surrendering my situation to God and allowing him just to work through me. And I'm promising you that he can do that for you too. And so, just before every podcast episode, you guys, I just pray so much that God just speaks through me. And so I want you to know, you're not here by accident. You're not listening to this. Somebody didn't share this with you. You're not listening to it in the time of the day, the season of your life by accident. You guys, we serve a God who knows everything about us, the most intimate things about our lives. And that just blows my mind, because I'm there's billions of people, and God knows my heart. He knows my desires. He knows my past and my hurts, and he knows yours too. And so he knows exactly where you are in this moment, listening to this and hearing this. And I just know he's going to meet you. And that's what this is all about. And I hope that you know that that's my heart in sharing this. And it's not to tell you what to do or anything, but I wish I had somebody telling me all of these things 3-4 years ago. And so I want to be here with you. I want to give you that grace and that understanding and justification that you are so worthy of just an extraordinary love. And I'm not just saying something that you see in the movies and gives you sparks and all the feelings and butterflies, but really you guys, God is love, and he intended us to be in partnership with another human being. Life is hard. And I actually feel like it's been 3 days since I seen Brett. We both kind of had just been busy with work, and our schedules hadn't really been lining up. And we're kind of that couple that we see each other every day. And I'm dude, my heart just kind of aches, not because I miss him because he's my boyfriend, but because I'm he's just my person. And God just speaks through him so much. And we serve each other, we serve each other on a different level than just life, but really through our spirits. And so that's what I want you to know, is out there for you, and God's intention for you to do life with somebody. And the Bible says, where two or more are gathered, there he is also. And so it's important for us, you're not desiring a relationship or companionship because or by accident, right? So what you're feeling is validated. And so I know that I've just walked inside and outside of God's will through my dating experiences. And I hope, what I'm sharing with you just really brings you courage and just peace and insight on what it is that you deserve. So, I keep saying, I'm you guys, if we desire this relationship that's so full and so loving, and there's peace and there's no questioning, and I'm not saying it's perfect by any means, but just desiring another human being that desires the same thing that we do, and someone who's also in pursuit of the Lord and just living righteously and serving another, in a partnership, you guys, how much more does God want that for us, right? If he desired that for us, it's not why would he not want us? Why would he not want to give you that person in your life? So God's not withholding anything from you. You don't just need to earn it or deserve it. Do you know what I'm saying? And so he already desires that for you. And I think he just kind of gives us that opportunity, gives us free will, right? So it's our choice what we do with our life, who we have sex with, who we date, who we talk to. And so I just want you to know that like, if you desire those things, that God wants them even more for you, and he plans to give you those things. And so last week, just to recap real quick, we talked a lot about sex. And so like some different situations you might be in and maybe uncomfortable, not sure what to do. And, just some things that I think we don't really talk about, right? Or our friends aren't really like upfront with us about, hey, this is probably what you should be doing. And like, or they don't want to hurt your feelings or whatever. And so I'm going to talk about those things. I talked about those situations you might be aware of, you might be in, a little bit about maybe your intimacy history, and just really where to go from here. And so I give you guys some advice on some actions to take, some prayers to make, and how to give yourself just some grace through that process. And just, of course, like I said, ultimately giving you that insight on what God calls us to do and what he has for us, and just how to guard your heart through that decision-making of the physical intimacy opportunities, right? So I love you guys. I'm so excited for you to take a listen if you have not yet, or if you need to re-listen and just feel justified with where you're at, as well as just hear where God is calling you to next. So go ahead and check out that last episode. So today I want to do a little Q&A with you guys about some of your current situations, and it might be a tiny bit repetitive of last week, but some of these questions were so powerful, and I really, really wanted to reiterate them, kind of go a little bit more into depth about a few of them. Some questions that you've had. You guys have been asking me about dating, some toxic relationships, breakups. Breakups is such a powerful just topic, you guys. And it's just really, this is totally stuff that people just don't talk about. Like I've said, when I broke up with my ex, I had like a handful of friends tell me afterwards, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have been with him. Like we kind of saw it. And I'm like, well, why don't you say something? You know what I mean? Like we're so afraid to, we just tiptoe around with somebody because we don't want to hurt their feelings. But you guys, when you're not being upfront with somebody about their situation, like you're really just like allowing them to hurt longer. And like my whole purpose and my desire for this now and going in this direction of relationships, you guys, we take it too lightly. We act like dating is just a fun thing, and it should be fun. It's fine if you're trying to just experience some things and get to know maybe what you want, but all in safe manners. But you guys, like, I just know this because I'm a girl, first off, and I know that my emotions rise high, and I make up these ideas in my head about this perfect guy and blah, blah, blah. Before I know it, I'm in too deep. He's not who God's called me to be, and I'm hurt, and I'm here years later still feeling those effects, and I don't want you to. And so we got to quit acting like Tinder and all of these things are just normal. It's like, God had a very specific idea, and I love that. I love that there's no confusion. It's black and white what God's desire for relationships and marriage, Adam and Eve, right? That companionship, that love, that covenant. I want you to feel protected. I want you to feel so desired, and kind of tiptoeing and dabbling and dating, you guys, it's just going to cause you hurt. And so I know it starts out that way. It might start out light and fun, but before you know it, it's like sometimes we just get into deep, and we have good intentions, and it's just, I don't want you to feel that, because I'm frustrated that I became that girl that I never wanted to be. And I put myself through so much more hurt than I ever needed. And by the grace of God, I did get out of that. And I'm here being able to share that with you today. But there's a lot of stuff I could have avoided. And so I'm glad I went through that, because hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and avoid these things too. And so I'm going to dive into these questions with you guys. Number one, so someone's saying like, hey, I feel really convicted. I'm in a relationship. Maybe we're living together and, we're being intimate, and I just feel like I shouldn't anymore. And I'm really scared to have that conversation with somebody. I feel like this is such a common thing. And I have been there. I remember that. I remember getting in a huge fight and just feeling like I was like hyperventilating. And I was like, oh my God, like, what if this is it? What if we're breaking up? Like, it was so difficult, you guys, and just being unequally yoked. And like I said, relationships, there's a lot of, differences between male and female and struggles and sharing your life with somebody, but just not being on the same page spiritually, you guys, it just creates a deeper hurt and just confusion and struggle that doesn't really need to be there. And so being with that person and feeling convicted, and you're like, hey, I need to bring this up. And so number one, all these situations, you guys, I just encourage you to pray. Pray that God gives you wisdom. Pray that he gives you just peace and validation in what you're feeling. And I just tell you, like, if the person that you're with, like if you're afraid of that conversation, and I'm saying that because I've been there, and you're afraid of how they're going to react, and you think that they could, lash out on you or something, or make you feel guilty, like it's kind of red flag, right? I was telling somebody this the other day. You guys, I, oh my God, I have like so much desire and like protection over like other females. And I'm saying this because, like I said, I'm pissed off that I allowed myself to be so weak in that moment. But you guys, your body is your body. And I don't care if you're dating somebody, like you absolutely, every single opportunity, have a right to tell somebody no. Like sex is not just like, it's a big deal. Like God created it in such a intense manner, especially what we go through as females when we experience it, right? It's kind of a different level than guys. We all kind of know that, right? So don't you dare feel guilty about having to tell somebody no. It is your body. It is your decision. It is your future. And so going into that, like have that conviction, like that empowerment, feeling like, hey, this is not just our decision. Like this is my decision. And I'm telling you guys, like out of a couple of these things too, when you're obedient and you take those steps and like you take a stand for yourself, like God is going to take care of you. Just believe that. You have to trust that. And so I encourage you to, have that conversation with somebody, let them know how you're feeling. And depending on how they respond to you guys, you might want to question if that's the right relationship with you that you should be in, And so if I kind of talked about this in the last one, I guess, but if you guys are both believers, you're like, hey, this person's also feeling this way too. I number one suggest that you probably don't live together. You don't put yourself in situations where you might be tempted. Or honestly, you guys, the Bible says at some point, I don't know off the top of my head what verse it is, but the Bible actually says, like, if you don't have self-control, then like you should basically get married. Like that's what it says. So if you're like, hey, we're both believers, we're planning on getting married, literally you guys, like, what are you waiting for? You know what? So that would be my advice on that. I feel like that could actually be an entire podcast episode in itself to discuss, but I want to keep on going. So number 2, very important. I'm in a toxic relationship, but I can't afford how to get out of it. Been there, done that. Was really one of the main reasons I actually searched for another stream of income, because I lived in the Bay Area at the time and I was like, wow, I can't actually afford to live by myself. But you guys, I promise you, like when you're obedient, because I wasn't even in that place yet where I was financially stable, but when you're obedient and you're like, hey, I know this is not where God has me. Like, obviously I feel like unsettled in my heart, my spirit, being around this person. I completely understand the fear of that, because you're just like, hey, logically, like this doesn't make sense. Like, how can I get away? Or I don't have family around. I don't have any friends. Like, what do I do? Again, start with prayer, surrendering your situation, being like, God, this is the way I want to walk in is your will. And I pray that you open those doors only you can open. And as you take those steps, you guys, as you acknowledge, like I spent a lot of time. I decided I was going to break up with this person. It took me a month to do it, because I was like, holy smokes, like stuff could hit the fan. I'm really terrified of a lot of things that could happen. I had no idea how it was going to go. So I understand that fear, but I just spent a lot of time in quiet time, you guys. Like I woke up earlier than I ever have in my entire life and opened my Bible, and I just waited on God and waited for him to just give, me that wisdom. And he's going to open doors. He's going to give you strength. He's going to build you up. And you guys, like, if you're obedient, you ask him for all those things, like he's going to meet you and he's going to prepare you for that perfect time. And so just trust that. And so, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can't tell you exactly, where that's going to come from, but I do know that we serve a God who is faithful, and he's going to provide for you. He's going to take care of you. And if you're in a situation that you shouldn't be in and you're acknowledging that you want to get out of it, he's going to meet you and he's going to meet your needs. And so dive into Proverbs, dive into Psalms, wake early, and just really spend some quiet time, and he will lead you. And I promise you, like, you might look back on this season of your life, because I did. And I was like, wow, that was one of the most special times of like my intimacy with the Lord, because I had never heard his voice so clearly. And so I'm weirdly excited for you to experience that, because some of those hardest times in our lives is really where we meet God. We're kind of like at that rock bottom. And I was like, it was scary, like every single day, but you're going to be okay. Everything's going to work out, and God has you. He loves you so much, and he wants only the best for you. So that's what I'll say about that for now. Number 3, this one I was struggling with kind of recently. Hey, I'm waiting on God, basically in this season of singleness, and I feel like nothing's happening. When is it my turn if I desire this love that he wants for me? And so I remember being in that place probably like a year before, maybe it was like 6 months before Brett and I started like actually dating. And I remember like kind of being like, I was hurt. I was really sad. Like my body actually like ached. I was like, man, I just want to be with somebody. Like I'm 28, 29. I think I was 29. And I'm like, this is not that great. Like, hey, I thought I'd get married a lot earlier. And I did really hard things. Like I walked away from a relationship that most people wouldn't walk away from. And I did all this personal growth. And I'm in this place and I'm like, hey, God, what about me? Like, I know it's like, deep down, God didn't forget about you, but you can't help but like question that. Right. And so I've been there and these are a couple of thoughts that I have. Number one, like really seeking just peace and that loneliness. And some of that sounds weird, but I got to a point where I was like living by myself. I kind of work from wherever. So I just found myself working at home probably too much or just alone. I just didn't really have like a ton of interaction. Then I was like, okay, every night I'm home alone. And I was like, wow, I'm seeking someone to do life with. Like, I'm in a perfect position. I've done all the hard work. Like, you're never going to be perfect for somebody at one point, But I felt like I was in a healthy place where I was like, dude, God, do you see me? Like, do you see all the hard work I did? Like, I am ready. I'm here. And I just kept on waiting. And I got to a point where I was like, you know what, God, if you've called me to this season of singleness, to be alone and just to like be with you, because I know that when I met somebody, I would want to put so much of my heart into serving them and loving on them and being together. And I knew I'd want to be inseparable, right? And I actually love that, Brett. I have a pretty good balance of independence now. But looking back, I was like, okay, I really want to value this time, God. If this is what you're calling me to, if you're like not open that door right now, then I'm going to pray that I'm going to acknowledge what you're doing through me and what you're teaching me. And also, you guys, like maybe it's not just about us, right? And so I even talked to his sister a couple months ago and she's like, hey, like if you and Brett had met or dated earlier, like I just don't think it would have been right. Like he just was doing his thing and his business. And I think that like you guys met exactly when you needed to. And so maybe it's not just you. Maybe God's not holding on to you. Maybe God is, protecting you in the meantime and teaching you things. He's so intentional. But maybe in the meantime, you're like, hey, I really wanted to be intentional about praying for my partner. I'm like, hey, God, something I really prayed for was intimacy, right? I was like, God, please protect this man from like potential temptation of this world, because if you've called him for me and me for him, then like, I'm sure he's going to encounter hard things. And so if you put your focus on those things, like, hey, God, I want to value this time one-on-one with you, because there's going to be a time when I'm a wife and a mom, and that time is going to be far and few. And just being intentional on praying for what God's doing through them. And really, really, you guys, praying for community around you, other believers, other friends that have similar, minds, because sometimes our loneliness doesn't need to be fulfilled by a relationship, but we just need community altogether, So that's a great question. Number 4, I love this one. But, I was kind of in this place in a sense. But it's hard seeing it from the outside to somebody that you love. So we fight a lot, they're kind of Christian, they're kind of open to it, but not really as much as me. There's a lot of struggles, but the times that are good, they're really good. Ugh, you guys. Okay, again, chemistry is a common thing. I think that you can have chemistry with a lot of people. I think you can have fun with a lot of people. But I think when fun is fun, but sometimes this is the thing. Fun is temporary, right? I want you to have fun with your partner. That God wants you to have fun with your partner. I have a lot of fun with Brett. But at the same time, you guys, when life happens, like when I'm saying like, when maybe you're struggling financially or something in your life happens that you don't expect and it doesn't sit with you well or something, when you have another partner who doesn't have that same foundation of you, the fun doesn't really matter anymore, right? Because now you're focused in on like, hey, this is really life. Like I keep thinking, I'm like, hey, there's a couple guys where I'm like, well, we had fun together. Like we had similar interests, we had chemistry, all those things. But the moments when I'm like going through it and I'm talking to Brett and, he's giving me insight and wisdom and just God is just speaking through him. This happened the other day. And I just had a moment where I was like, you are literally everything I prayed for. Like, I just really, really needed somebody to know what to say to me when I had a hard day. Just that, you guys. It doesn't have to be like something extreme, like losing your job or something, or a family member dying, but like just a hard day. Just life's tough, right? So just to have somebody who like really can meet you versus I was in a relationship where I was like, hey, if I try to come with you for something, A, you don't know how to pray for me, or B, you make me feel like I'm just whiny. Something along those lines. Does that make sense? So it's like chemistry is common. Like you're going to have fun with your person. Like, yeah, I hope that you want that in somebody else, but also like You guys, the foundation to a relationship should really be like ultimately God. And there's so much more to relationship than just having fun. And it's like when life happens, when you are connected by marriage and money and other issues that come, like you need someone who can love you, who can bring peace, who can be your rock, who can have the correct foundation, who can know who to go to when they don't know what to do. Right. And it's like, I think about this triangle analogy, right? So God's at the top of the triangle and you and your partner are on either sides. And if you are going towards God, you're ultimately coming together. Do you see that? But if you're running towards each other and just that fun, just that chemistry, and there's a lot of other crap going on, but like, it's just when it's good, it's good. Okay. The good is just going to make you pass you by. You're just going to go past each other. You're going to lose sight of each other. But when you're running towards God, we're all meeting together as one. And there's just this community between the three of us that just makes sense. It makes life a little bit easier. We're all on the same page. I just can't stress that enough, you guys. Like I'm saying, because I know there was just such an emptiness to my relationship when I was like, this person doesn't know how to serve me, and not necessarily their fault, right? But when I'm going through things, when I'm having a hard day, when I just need someone to lift me up or to pray over me, like that fun doesn't substitute for that part of them, right? So it's so important and I hope that I didn't say that too harshly, but you guys, I know it because I was in a relationship where things were like I remember questioning God, and I was like, God, like, wait, because I remember the very first time God told me to like walk away, and I did not do that, obviously. And I'm like, but he's like a nice guy, and like we have similar interests, and like he's not like evil by any means. Like this, how does this make any sense? But black and white, right? Black and white. Do they know the Lord? Are they seeking the Lord? Because you guys, if they don't know God, they don't know love. And if they don't know love, how can they really serve you and love you? And like marriage cannot be based off of fun, right? Can't be based off of chemistry. It has to be. This is where logical thinking comes in, and that foundation of faith really, really matters because they're accountable to God, right? They seek God for direction in their life, and that just makes things so much simpler. So I encourage that. Love you. And finally, you guys, number 5, how do we know when it's time to walk away? So I kind of mentioned in my 3-year relationship, I knew that God told me in year 1 to walk away. And I ignored it, and I manipulated my own thinking to be like, okay, this is what God actually meant. And I'm just going to keep going, and he's going to come around, right? Like I'm trusting that he's going to bring him around. And I pray that God does. I pray that God does like fill this guy with his spirit one day. And I believe that, but it didn't mean it was supposed to be with me. Right. And I know that especially as women, we're like, I want to be the one to save him. And I want, and we want a prayer, but that's the exception. And, we're most often the rule. Right. And I've been the rule over and over and over. And I'm telling you, life is a lot easier when you're with somebody who already just knows the Lord. So how do I know when it's time to walk away? So for those next 2 years, I was fighting and ignoring God, and I just never had peace. I always had this fear. When I thought about us breaking up, I just like I said, I would like kind of like hyperventilate, or I would freak out, or I would kind of like make up these scenarios in my head. You probably feel this too sometimes. You're like, well, God, if this like one thing happens, then we're meant to be. Like, tell me somebody else thinks that way, right? Like there's so many things I would do probably daily for 2 years. I was like, okay, if the light is red, when I go through the light, when it turns red, we're not supposed to be together. And then I would like, freak out and I close my eyes. This is absurd. God doesn't work that way, you guys. And if you have those fears, there's peace versus fear. God is not, let me make it really easy for you. And I'm telling you, I wish somebody would have told me this. God is not a God of confusion. It's black and white. All the things I talk about, he's very clear. There's no gray area. Thank God. He's not like, well, in this conception, if the light is green. No, he's like, hey, this is what I'm telling you. And if you feel unsteady in your spirit, it's for a reason. Fear is not of God. Confusion is not of God. If you're going through literally anything and you're like, oh my God, I have all this anxiety, like this is God telling me something. God is not a fear, you guys. God doesn't use anxiety to stress you out, to make you make a decision. He brings you peace when something is right. And so you also choose where you put that your energy and your thought. Like, am I choosing peace? Am I choosing fear? But side story. When it comes to a relationship, I had so much fear. I had so much anxiety all the time. But when I want to ask you this too, like, the first time I ever felt peace in that relationship, you guys, was the idea that there was relief when I thought about not being with them. And that took me time. I think we had like one of our last big fights towards the end of my relationship. And we were kind of joking about like, well, something about like us not just like being together. And normally I would be like, oh my God, no. Like we like would play back and forth about that, like breaking up. And the first time, like it was like the last time he said it. And I was like, whoa, that kind of actually brings me more peace and like relief than I would think about actually staying with you. Like that's a red flag, right? That's when I kind of knew. I was like, what you've been feeling, Danny, is like kind of justified in that moment, right? So if there's any bit of relief in you when you're like, hey, do I feel more at peace maybe not being with this person, even if it's like slightly, and you know you might be getting there in time, because it took me time, it took me months to justify. I ignored my thoughts for so long. But then I was like, wait, actually, like I can do this. I'm not supposed to be with this person. I feel more like me. I feel more relaxed. I feel more peace. And the anxiety, the fear, it kind of feels really freaking good to just let it go. And so I hope that that makes sense when you realize like maybe it takes you some time, maybe the seed is planted in your head. I remember it was like over summertime. We were about to move into like a brand new apartment, and my family kind of had this like intervention with me. They're all moving out of town, but they're like, hey, we basically don't think this is right anymore. My grandma called me, my brother's texting me. They're like, don't sign a lease. I'm like, oh my God, you guys. Like, first off, it kind of felt like new news to me, but I was also like, hey, what they're saying about my relationship is kind of like justified. But I was like, dude, I'm literally about to sign like a lease. Like, I don't have anywhere else to live. And in the back of my mind, I thought, well, if anything happens, I'll just break the lease. I'll figure it out. That's like not the most ideal situation, but I could do that. But that crossed my mind, you know? And so I think it was like 3 months later, I made the decision. I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And now I have this other, you know, opportunity where I can make some more money, and I'll work as hard as I can. And in the meantime, pray until God gives me direction and the next step to take, and he'll provide for me. And so if you have to even ask like, hey, when do I know when it's time to walk away? You probably know it's not right. And I'm not saying I used to have this theory, you know, I'm like, oh, if you break up once, you're probably never supposed to be together, because why would it get to the point where you actually like split? But there are some people who come back together. Maybe you will. I actually have a really close friend. I don't want to tell a story because I don't want everyone to like make up in their head. Maybe one day, but no. I've actually both actually are believers. It just wasn't the right timing. Broke up, came back together, different situation. But breaking up with somebody because they're not in line with your beliefs and just what you feel like is right and what you're called to, that's a different situation, right? So yeah, I think you guys, all of these things, it's just trust your gut, you know. And when I talk about your gut, it's the Holy Spirit who's like whispering in your ear, like, hey, it's time to walk away. Or, you know, even though it's good, it's not as good as I've called you to be with, and I have something so much better. Or, you know, that gut feeling when you're like, hey, God, you have thought of me, but where are you? Where is this guy? Where is this girl that I'm waiting to be with? You know, trust that God is providing, and he's in the waiting, and trust that he has options for you to get out, and trust that gut feeling when you're feeling convicted about not being intimate with somebody any longer, that you're right and valid in your feelings. And so I would love to know what you guys think about all of those, maybe which one really, really speaks to you, maybe one you want me to go more in depth about. But I love sharing these. I hope that you guys take this with grace. I hope that you see that I just love you through this and want ultimately the best for you. So I want to leave you guys with a few prayer points. So thank you, God, for giving me a spirit of conviction and that I'm aware of my feelings. Give me the courage to have these hard conversations and peace to know that I stand correctly by seeking change. You're a God who is not logical, and I pray that you open doors that only you can open. Give me peace as I'm obedient towards these next steps, and make a way for me out of the situation and enter your will for me. Thank you for the person that you have for me, and thank you for protecting them, for growing them, and molding each of us in this season until we come together for your glory. God, thank you that you protected me from anything that may hurt me outside of your will. Give me discernment about when it's time to walk away and the courage to do so. And give me a heart that desires more of what you want from my relationship than my own understanding and what it convinces me to believe is good enough for me. So you guys, please rate, review, and subscribe. More people can hear about this when you share this. And how about you share it with somebody who's on your heart and you're brave enough to be that friend to do so. And let me know what you guys want to hear next, what you guys just really took a lot of value from. Maybe it's one of these conversations. Maybe it's something else. Let me know, and I would love, love, love to share it with you. You guys can DM me on Instagram at Danny Cakes, DANNNI Cakes, or at immeasurably.more.podcast. So I'll leave you guys with this, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways, know him, and he will make your path straight.